welcome everyone on this new episode of Place Together. I'm super happy to be here today with Kyle Weller. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing great. Excited to be here with you as well.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have the opportunity to ask you some of the questions. So you have a very impressive background, but okay. So maybe for the people who might not know you, could you introduce yourself in a few words?
Yeah, sure. My name is Kyle Weller. I am head of product at a brand new startup company. It's called Onehouse. Onehouse.ai is our website. I've been in data for about 10 years myself, building data platforms and data products, and super excited to be here to chat with you.
Yeah, likewise. Awesome. So I have two first questions just to warm up, maybe, if I can say.
hmm
The first one being your state of the art. And by that, so after that, I would like to make a quick retrospective of what you've been doing in the field in those 10 years and so on. But before getting into that, I like to ask about the state of the art of the people. So I don't mean any technology at all. I just mean what are you curious about lately? What are you working on? And yeah, what drives you?
Yeah. Yeah, things that I'm curious about. I'm obsessed with data engineering and as of late, data lakehouse architectures. So if you see or follow me online, you'll see talk a lot about those topics and those details around, especially open source projects around like Apache Hudi, Delta Lake, Apache Iceberg, and even one that helped co-launch one that's called Apache X Table now. So these are some areas that like really get me energized, really get me excited to talk about because I've seen firsthand the type of impact and innovation it can drive inside of companies and organizations to bring them to next level. So these are things that actively excite me, things that I'm excited for upcoming in the future. I think there there are so many signals pointing towards building more of these data lakehouse type architecture, and some of that's fueling this energy and motivation is around Gen AI applications, and some of that latest that I know you and your show and many others that have been on your show talk about as well, and so these types of new applications that people can develop and how they can leverage new LLM developments and um, it's really fueling a lot of cool new use cases and also additional push and motivation to build data structures like data lakehouses. So, yeah, excited about all this in the market today.
Awesome. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I will definitely ask you about open source and your participations and tips for everyone who want to work on these open source projects and like how to get started in open source and so on. Now maybe could we do a quick retrospective of like key moments of your career and maybe some key lessons attached to them?
Yeah, great question. Someone asked an interesting discussion style question once on, I think I remember if it was LinkedIn or Twitter, but they were asking, talk about a time when you first built a data lake or your first like data project or things like this, and it helped me reflect. And I was
Hmm.
even going back and to like 2013 is when I helped build my first data lake, and this was actually at Microsoft. I was in the Microsoft Office team and this is the first time that Microsoft Office products were going to get like full fidelity telemetry on their products. They had a lot of sampled data, and these were all products, that are like licensed and shipped and usually not connected to the internet. But this was a time in 2013 when we actually were launching the Office web apps, mobile apps, and even inside of desktop as Windows evolved to like Windows 8 and beyond. Windows 8 was never liked by anyone. But the online connectivity was getting much better for these Office applications, and so we really innovated and made a new next gen like data lake architecture for all the analytics and telemetry that we want to drive inside of Office products. From there, I moved through a couple different teams inside Microsoft while I was employed there, and I helped build data platforms at massive scale for the Microsoft search engine Bing. So that was really fun to build a core data platform around search, and then even at that time, it had applications to machine learning and AI and experimentation teams and some really fun things that we had inside there. I switched and pivoted slightly to building data products. That first touch point was around Cortana. If you know Microsoft's digital assistant, that's like Siri that Microsoft had for a period of time.
Hmm.
And that was really fun to build more like measurement data strategy around the product for the product success and how you can build a great conversational engagement with humans through a digital product like this. Then I went to build what is called Microsoft Machine Learning Services, and it's a way that you can execute R and Python inside of SQL Server directly. So this is pretty cool, like first of its kind, instead of only just like SQL code or sprocs that you run or things like that, you can also embed R and Python directly in to your SQL statements, which is pretty fun. Then I pivoted to Azure Databricks, and this is we partnered with Databricks as they were a much smaller company at the time. This is about 2017, 18, and we partnered with Databricks to help launch what they had previously built and launched on AWS. We launched that on Microsoft Azure. We built native integrations into the whole Azure backbone. We made this a full-fledged first-party Microsoft product that we were selling alongside with in that partnership with Databricks. And that was a super fun ride. We grew that product very fast. Um, and then I was having a great time up until about 20, what is it now, 2020 or so, when I bumped into an incredibly exciting opportunity to jump in at the ground floor of a new company. That's where I'm at currently today, Onehouse. And at Onehouse, we're building managed data lakehouse experiences, making it single click experiences to have a fully fledged managed easy lakehouse foundation to get started. So yeah, hopefully that gives you a little flavor of kind of those steps along my career journey and where I've been and what I'm up to today.
Yeah, that's awesome. There are many things to ask from there, but I would like maybe to uh, keep going on one house. So you share a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of the vision. You've been part of the building of different very impressive products at scale. So first question would be, what's the vision of one house today, and what got you so excited that you had to go on this new journey? So what do
Yep.
you see, or what, like, because yeah, what are you curious about, and what are you trying to achieve with the company, and yeah, what are like some insights that you might have around the technology there, and maybe what's after lake houses?
Great, great, thanks. And I think I can describe this well, perhaps from a specific story or experience that I had, and then lead up to how I discovered the opportunity, and then what it is that we're building and these kind of things. So let me describe
Sounds awesome.
an example of experience. And I saw this. This isn't just like one siloed experience, but I saw this kind of on repeat across many customers. The Azure Databricks product we built is incredible and it's amazing, and it's I love that product still today. It does some wonderful things. You should definitely check it out. One thing I noticed when people get started building their data lakehouse architecture is, if you think about what a data lakehouse is, it's on top of object storage like S3, ADLS, GCS, and you've got data in this file storage that then you can use a query engine. Something like Apache Spark is a great query engine. You can come and analyze and build data science applications and these kind of things to leverage that data that's in that object storage. But your highest value data is not born directly in the lake. It's not born. It doesn't originate there. It's not created inside that lake originally. It comes from somewhere. This is coming from either your services and application, your line of business applications that you have next to a human or a user, or it's coming from IoT sensors and devices. Data originates from other places outside of the lake. And I saw, even just to share like a one specific example, we had a really great customer, Fortune 500 style customer, that they pre-purchased a large amount of credits for using Azure Databricks, and they were really excited about the product, really excited about what they're building, and they made this big purchases a long road to get to the deal and sign the contract, and they sent the check, and then the meters sat idle for quite a while, like the meters in terms of like measuring their product usage. And I remember even like
Hmm.
our VPs inside Microsoft, they come breathing down our neck, hey, why is this customer not using the product? They paid all the money already, but they're not using it yet. And it's like, well, they still have like an engineering project to get the data to the lake so that they can use the product and build this whole lakehouse kind of stack on top of it. And this means that
Hmm.
they had to extract data out of transactional databases, OLTP databases. They had to extract data out of event streams. They had to extract data from other applications and telemetry sources and Elasticsearch source in these places to get it there so that it can be queried and analyzed and build amazing data science models on top of. Um,
Hmm.
so that's where these type of experiences of getting that data to the lake, I saw on Repay was a challenge to get it there, and time intensive and a DIY experience. So when I bumped into a recruiter from Greylock, it's a VC firm in Silicon Valley, had reached out and said, hey, this person is starting up a new company, you might be interested. I said, tell me more. They CC'd Vinod Chandar onto the email. I'm like, oh, I know that guy. I had never met him before, but I knew of him because he had invented and created an open source project called Apache Hudi, HUDI. And I'm like, I definitely needed to chat with this guy because I knew his project very well. And when he started to describe what he wanted to build from a company perspective, it was all around these areas of bringing that data to the lake and accelerating that data to the lake. And I would notice the opportunity right away, light bulb moments right away. I'm like, okay, yes, like all of my customers would want to buy this today. If this existed, if they knew this existed, this would make a big impact. So I was super pumped to jump in with Vinod near the beginning of the company and join Onehouse. That leads into some of what our vision is today to bring data in a continuous, low latency, very cheap and effective way from all of your sources, whether it's a database, event streams, cloud storage, applications of some kind. Bring that data into that foundation of a lakehouse, which is object storage, S3, ADLS, GCS, and write it into lakehouse table formats like Apache Hudi. We write data also to Apache Iceberg, to Delta Lake, and it doesn't just stop there. Like I'm sure we want to get into and talk about maybe what these lakehouse table formats are, but writing the data into these table formats, then it requires continuous maintenance and operations. And we've also innovated at Onehouse some really great ways to lay out the data locality and optimize how it's stored inside the storage for very fast access and analytics. So we can squeeze incredible 2x to even up to like 100x performance benefits on top of this data inside the lakehouse. So we automate this process of ingestion, optimizations, we synchronize it to multiple catalogs simultaneously and unlock a plug and play query engine experience to you on your lakehouse. So hopefully that helps to
Hmm.
see the vision.
Definitely helps. That's awesome. Well, I think I'll jump right into Apache OD, Delta Lake, Xtable, and Iceberg, Apache
Yeah.
Iceberg. So when we're speaking about these frameworks, it's a lot of maintenance. Each one has its own thing. What could you say about the differences between um, those ones? And have you seen companies or clients that implement not only one of them, like I don't know, delta tables, but like they have Apache OD and they have delta tables in their lake house? Like, what can you tell us about these architectures and how and what you've seen in the field?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an area that I mentioned at the beginning of a lot of personal interest. I just get very excited about these topics as well. I've done a ton of research and chatted with hundreds of folks that are in each of these respective communities, right? Like I was there as a product lead with Azure Databricks when we first created Delta Lake, and when we first created it was not open source, and then a year later we open sourced that project in 2019. And so now working across several of these communities and seeing them firsthand, I've written and talked about and published a lot of materials on what these three projects are, how they're different, how are they alike, what can be shared. So yeah, all three projects are amazing. All three projects are actually like growing at rapid paces also. Apache Hudi, Apache Iceberg, Delta Lake. There's a lot of developers contributing to and a lot of great companies that are benefiting from them. Some of the core, like first, let's talk about similarities. Similarities, right? These all write data into Parquet files under the hood. And Parquet files, these are like columnar storage files that make it so that analytical queries can read and access them faster. Now, each of these projects, Hudi, Delta, and Iceberg, they create metadata layers on top of these files. And these metadata layers serve a couple purposes. One is object storage is immutable by nature. And so when you want to mutate this data, apply updates, apply deletes, these kind of things are very challenging, very expensive to do on immutable file storage natively. And so by adding metadata layers, you can introduce concepts like transaction logs of certain kinds. So you can achieve ACID transactional guarantees when you have multiple write scenarios or when you have updates and deletes and these kind of things. So you can, this is one purpose of the metadata. Another general purpose at the high level of this metadata layers is to also store and leverage statistics about the files underneath to achieve incredible performance benefits, both from the writer sides and the reading sides. So, for example, you can um, build in mechanisms to sort the locality of the files. You can actually like physically resort, but you can also store things like Apache Hudi has like a indexing subsystem. And so you can build and store and recalculate indexes on top of your data in these files as well. Yes, so each one has a slightly different like way that they operate the metadata on top. And before like diving into differences, I also want to call it like these three projects, they aren't actually alone. Like these are the three that most people talk about most often: Apache Hudi, Delta Lake, Apache Iceberg. But there's more. There's one of notable interest called Apache Pymon. It actually just graduated from the Apache Software Foundation the last week, maybe even just a few days ago. It graduated as a top level project. This one was started out of Flink. It's actually some, originally what I hear is it was some Iceberg developers that were struggling to get lower latency things with Iceberg. So they started building with Flink and they created a new table format. Actually, it's called Apache Pylon. So there's four. There's actually more. Like I know of about maybe like 5, 6, 7 different like table formats, quote unquote, if you may. And so it's actually kind of a confusing landscape. But where the differences come in, like each of these projects, a lot of times people have this sense that like, hey, there's over time we're going to just converge, and over time there will maybe just be one project, and everyone can just contribute and build to these things. But actually, if you study their roadmaps of these projects, you study what their features are, but you study what the communities want inside of these projects, it's actually divergent. Um,
Mm.
and they have unique specialties which feature gaps can always be closed, but preferences in the direction of building these projects that are actually quite different. And so like Apache Iceberg has a really great thin specification which makes it very portable, very easy to integrate into certain scenarios. Apache Hudi is chasing after and building a lot of rich database level services, and the community actually focuses a little bit more on like low latency and near real time, near streaming kind of scenarios. Delta Lake focuses a lot on Apache Spark to make that the best engine in the world, right? Of course, they're extending it. They have some amazing things coming out with like their Delta kernel and things for people to read. Um, but yeah, these projects, they're they're purposefully different because the communities need it and the users that are using it and developing it at the same time, because this is open source, right? Um, they have these different things, right? So when this comes to some problems, because you also asked me in that question, do you see users do you see users using multiple or switching or these kind of things, right? I
Yeah.
absolutely see people using multiple of these table formats, and the most common question where people from an outside perspective are like, "Oh, why? Why would you need multiple?" And actually, there's some confusing things that are happening, I think, in the industry right now today. These are like kind of fresh things, right? Where so for example, probably most noteworthy is Snowflake recently adopted Apache Iceberg, and they have some really great features inside Snowflake now, where you can create externally managed Iceberg tables. You can create native Iceberg tables inside Snowflake. Some really cool experiences, and it's amazing what Snowflake's doing to innovate and also extend down to the lake and build services and features around this. It's pretty cool to check out. Since they only have one in the mix, and of course it's like intentionally different from what Databricks has, and Databricks with Delta Lake. Now you have a lot of folks that um, are using both Databricks and Snowflake, and they're kind of caught in a pickle, right? So actually, like I published some research online. It's come out of this firm called ETR. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but a research firm that is well plugged into these things. They share the statistics that somewhere between 40% and 60% of people that use Snowflake or use Databricks use both. And so
Mm.
now you have, like, if you're using both products and you're using them to the best of their capabilities, Delta Lake's going to work better with Databricks. Iceberg's going to work better with Snowflake. And so now folks are like, oh man, so okay, I've got a core central platform. Which format do I put it in? And so there's contention and confusion and these kind of things along there. So this is where in February last year, our company Onehouse, we actually started a project, and we announced this in February, called One Table. And One Table, its mission was to create interoperability and bridges across all three table formats so that you could simultaneously use all three and you could interop the metadata across them in an omnidirectional way. We co-launched this with Microsoft and Google in November of last year. So Microsoft and Google, they immediately came to us and were very excited. Hey, let's build this. We need this. We know our customers need this. We hear this feedback constantly from our customers. Let's do this together. So they were both excited with us. And now we also have donated the project to the Apache Software Foundation just recently. We're very excited that it was accepted into the incubation program. And now there's a really diverse set of contributors, and folks that are rallying around contributing to help build it. Folks like Walmart and Adobe and Dremio, Cloudera, a few more great companies that are pitching in and wanting to help this project grow. So we're excited about what this could do for the future, unlock this interoperability and make it easy
Yeah.
so that you don't have to choose just one.
Yeah. Yeah, this is very impressive. And this is something that, like, there is always this. I hear a lot when we speak about Gen AI and LLMs, like, is there
Yeah.
going to be one big model or many
Uh,
little model? And in
uh,
open source, I feel like if we look at those the all the format tables, we can also think like, will there be a lot for many use cases or will there be a big one? And I'm not sure that there is an answer either, like, for anything, if it's going to be like one thing that takes everything, but it seems possible. And so, all right, so I'm super curious about this, but I think I would like to ask you about open source first. So how did you got into open source, or how did you got curious in what was going on in the open source community? And maybe if you can share some insights for people who would like to start getting their hands on building on open source project or reading open source projects, or like the benefits of following what's going on, yeah, maybe you have I'm sure that you have some insight that can be very useful to all of us.
Yeah, sure. I think open source is a really exciting place where it's so cool to see. Like when like step back and think about what's really happening is it's individuals and companies and just like groups from around the world, from around the globe, everywhere that are coming
Yeah.
and contributing in larger open source projects. They're contributing little features here. They're contributing testing. They're sharing ideas. They're brainstorming. It's amazing to see that collaboration of folks from around the globe, from a diverse places, diverse companies and needs, exposures that find ways to like innovate together. I think that that's like
Yeah.
super exciting. And so definitely like if you're an aspiring developer that wants to, get into places that you can rub shoulders with these folks and brainstorm with these folks and contribute. Yeah, find open source projects. They can be small, they can be medium, they could be large. It doesn't matter. Find these and find ways in. I'll talk from a lens of since I've now been working with or contributing to or sharing ideas with Apache Software Foundation projects. These projects typically have things like community meetings. Like I can talk for like Apache Hudi even more specifically. There are like monthly community meetings you can join that are posted on the website. There are office hours you can join. There are Slack channels you can join. Um, of course, naturally, all of this also flows through GitHub, right? And discussions on like RFCs and designs and discussions on issues and things like that. There's always work to pick up. There's always work to like contribute to a review or read, and ways to network with the community. So I think that that's I think that it's powerful and exciting, and I think it's also from a career perspective something that's very worthwhile. That like as an engineer, a software engineer, data engineer, like as you contribute to these things, it matters a lot also on your resume and from a career building perspective. I think companies really value that experience as well.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely. And I think I will come back on this topic of career because I think that um, there are many things that I would like to ask you about and like learn from your journey. I think before asking you about scaling in general and maybe on previous projects and your vision of scaling, I'd like to ask you about the the philosophy around building. So, what do I mean by that? You've been building products and tools that people have used at very important scales. And so, what's your vision today around technology? Like, maybe these questions doesn't resonate, maybe it does, but do you have a visions around what does it mean to you to build things that people will use and like to contribute to something bigger? Do you have insights on that? Do you have something that you can share?
Yeah, sure. I can think about this question in two ways. One is like what it means to an individual, but also like what matters in creating products like this. And I'll start from that lens actually is what matters the most is like building things that people need and identifying that need is very, very important. And also, I can share just personally coming from like a large mega corporation like Microsoft down to now like a teeny tiny startup. When I joined, it was a couple of us huddled around a single desk in like a single little like meeting room. And that experience is completely eye opening in how to build products and how you need to adapt and change. Right. Of course, at a larger corporation, larger organization, you have so many signals at your disposal and ways to learn and understand and find out what the customers need. But also, there's a mix of even just like strategy from a leadership perspective and where the company's going as a whole that like it's a whole different ball game of how you define what you're going to build and what that product will be at that kind of level versus also now at like a smaller startup we have a lot more control of our destiny individually and we have a lot less data at our disposal, a lot less like just, hey, we're fed information, we know what the customers want, we know what the market signals are. So a lot more like rigorous research and talking with customers and really pulling through like, because it's one thing to talk to a user and like, oh yeah, this sounds like you would need this and this sounds like it would make a difference. No, are you going to sign? Are you going to buy this? Is there commitment that like we build this thing and it actually makes a difference? Like learning that and finding that and like getting to the fine comb details of the individual components of that feature and how it operates, it's a whole different ball game inside there, but it's very satisfying as well, especially like if you look at some of these things, like obviously like Onehouse, our company and product, we're really excited about what it's doing, and I feel that super self-fulfilling of like, hey, we're making some great progress. But also thinking about like that open source project we mentioned, Apache X Table, seeing how fast we went from idea to like launching this side by side with some of the biggest players out there, now to it like being picked up and used. There's stories and things that I can't share all the details on inside here, but this project is already being like used and adopted and pulled into some incredible global scale like services that touch everyone's daily lives. So like the other day I was just stepping back and thinking about this. I'm like, wow, we went from idea and inception to like touching like, many, like most people on the planet in this amount of time is really cool to sit back and think about.
Yeah, that's 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 awesome. Um, awesome. So I think I'm super curious now to you've been very close to many projects that have scaled in very short periods of times. And I was wondering if you could share about the feeling and the experiences and like the building around how to scale and how to iterate fast in a scaling process. And so this question is very big, but I think it would be very useful to like know maybe if you have some frameworks or how do you approach to like know that you want to scale something but iterate fast and take the right decisions that while scaling we adapt based on the needs of the clients and align with what's best for the business. So do you have insights and frameworks or ideas that you can share around that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this is something that I feel like over the last five or so years, I got the opportunity to learn a lot about. So I was coming from a mindset of maybe more large organization with Microsoft and these experiences. When we started to partner with our amazing partners there at Databricks, I got exposed to like different styles of planning and product building and approach to the market and these kind of things. I started exposed to a whole different like um, uh, 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 way of building and scaling these products that I found very exciting and satisfying. And now even leading to today being at like, of course, a proper small scale startup of my own. So I think that you wanted to talk about how to look at scaling, right? I also have stories and experience of like challenges with scaling and stuff too, if we wanted to get into. But you wanted to focus more in on like how to scale and when to make the right decisions in that scaling process, right? It's kind of where you're going, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so um, in these, I think it's really important to craft like incremental strategies of release. And so, especially when you're in more of a nimble startup, your signals, like I mentioned before, you have low fidelity signals to help you understand. Like you don't have a lot of telemetry or fingertips to really prove, disprove hypotheses right away before you even ship. So you need to ship something. You need to talk to your customers, learn, understand, have that right framework to dissect the need and validate that need quickly. But then you got to ship something. You got to get something in the user's hand so that you can see how they use it and interact, and then you can adapt and adjust accordingly. So one thing that has been a lot of time and energy and muscle spent, just myself personally, things that I needed to learn and grow and improve on this path as well, is how to break down these feature development and release cycles to be super incremental, tiny, tiny, as small as you can. You have limited resources. You've got one engineer, you've got two engineers, you've got 1 week, you've got 1 month. Like, we're not talking some quarterly planning thing, we're not talking some larger thing. How do you get something that moves the needle from the customer right now that you can put in their hands, see how they adapt, and then ship the next piece, next piece, next piece, like constant release train cycles, get them out there and get that feedback. So there's fine lines to balance too, of like, hey, if we get this out there and it doesn't have this other component, like this one doesn't work well until you get this other thing. But you have to make some hard trade-offs inside there. And also sometimes there's a bias or a feeling of like, oh, if we ship this thing like a little early, like it kind of looks a little ugly, or maybe it's not like 100% polished or looks perfect. You have to be ready to accept and be willing to give something that's not completely 100% perfect. And of course, with the right context, with the right setup with your customers and partners and things, you develop programs that'll be more private preview focused. You develop programs which will be more testing focused. You develop this way to get that feature and release and validation cycle with your customer through these different stages, such that you can learn and adapt quickly along the way of building.
Awesome. Awesome. And if we can follow up on the experiences that you were mentioning before around scaling and like what can go wrong and what can, and yeah, maybe some insights like in terms of experience of your own.
Yeah, I think that had some really fun stories to share about scaling and things going wrong, as well as especially with, so Azure Databricks, we partnered with this thing. I was there when we first launched the service. We went from 0 to 9-figure AR in 12 months, like incredibly fast pace of growth. And there were so many different processes that would break down. We had to change up and fit into scale, but also engineering systems and things that got stretched and stretched as we grew. Right, there were some like very unexpected things that we bumped into that we had to rapidly adjust for the scale that was, I think, even scale that none of us were even planning for ahead of time. I'll give you an example. Like Databricks, when you deploy, right, it's a cluster, and it's Apache Spark cluster, right? It has a driver node, worker nodes. You fan these out, you get a job done, you turn it off, you shut it all down. And so we would have customers that would stand up clusters of enormous sizes, 1,000 node clusters, and you want to rapidly acquire and put together all these machines and VMs on the cloud, run the job, throw it all away, stand it up, throw it away, and like on repeat, very rapidly, up, down, right? And we would find nooks and crannies, even just down to like the backbone of Azure, that like the backbone of Azure wasn't even tested to these types of scale before, like acquiring the VMs and assigning IP addresses. And we started to hit all sorts of throttling limits under the hood that were set in place for safety for certain things that just other services were not operating at this kind of like bursty workload type thing, that from the Azure networking team, the storage team, the compute team, that just no one had like thought about before. And so we bump into these and like, oh man, the customer's getting throttled. They can't stand up the cluster, or maybe we're even running out of machines in the data center. And the capacity planning has not accounted for our product's growth very well inside here. And so there were some really fun challenges, both from like people, process, go to market, sales, support, that whole like engine, but also really fun challenges to tackle around engineering systems, um, and even just like cloud architecture and building that stack, because it's beyond even just the application. It's even on like cloud systems that we had to go and scale globally.
Hmm. Amazing. I think I'd like to do a transition that makes sense to me, which is like teams and
Hmm.
executives. So on both directions. So today it might be different, but working at Microsoft, I assume that either as when you're responsible of the project or anything, you might report or you might align with executives and so on. So in terms of aligning your teams around your team, and maybe executive discussions, what insights can you share on everyone is on the same page, everyone is iterating fast, but I would assume that this is also a culture and it might be very
Yeah.
intense. And so how do you communicate? How do you manage? And yeah, communication and management, I think, are the two things that I have in mind for this question.
Yeah, great question. And yeah, some of these experiences and learnings probably apply to like in particular large organizations. So hopefully some audience, like maybe there's ways that they can see it also um, in more medium scale. Maybe there's some things to extract out of this too, but it could be some systems even for large organizations. But yeah, I see like it come from the challenges come from maybe two sides. Like there's easy happy paths, but when challenges come in, it's either like an executive or a leader has a goal or a thing in mind that your team does not believe in, or your team does not think is the right thing to do. Or maybe you just feel like your customers are not going to enjoy or not going to benefit from, or you have something else in mind that you would rather do. So there's that type of alignment. Then there's also the reverse, which is also true as well, where um, you and maybe it kind of aligns to the same thing I was going to say from the ground up. Like there's something that you really know we need to get done. You truly believe and are passionate in from like low level signals direct with customers, from market research, from something that you then need to go convince your leadership that no, we have to change our strategy. We have to go get this thing done. It's going to mean XYZ impact, but it also derails these other things that we had previously planned. And so coming from either one of these directions, um, yes, it sometimes can be a painful process. Some people enjoy these kind of things. Sometimes it's just like painful to try to convince somebody else of your idea. And in a larger organization, this requires an immense amount of like rigor and data, and you'll write up countless like strategy documents and materials to convince, because it's not just about convincing like one leader. Like for an individual in an organization like this, you have to convince your boss, you got to convince your boss's boss, and then who knows how many layers are in between that decision maker of like it, depending on if it's like a big strategic like change that you're trying to drive, right?
Hmm.
And so to get that done, you need data, you need validation, you need a lot of these like components, and it can't even just happen overnight. You need meetings, you need discussions, you need all of these things, right? And to get to really get it done too, when it's getting to that kind of level, like you mentioned, Thomas, like you're going to also need buy-in or approval from like sister teams or like or teams that are next to you. You need to rally the troops and convince like, hey, not just like this product we're doing, but it also impacts and derails these initiatives, and this crosses. I'm going to have cross team dependencies where I need this person to build, I need this person to build. And so you got to go build and prepare this like debate or this material, this convincing material across the organization, and have those leaders backing you on your side when you approach the decision making in these places. And I have experienced and seen this many times, where sometimes you can get it done and you're like, wow, like this like thing that we saw and we recognized, we were able to change the direction of thousands of engineers because like we saw and recognized this, we advocated for this, we made the change happen. But a lot of times also you can't make the change happen, or you didn't have the right information, or just opinions are there, The status quo would not change, and then you got to live with that, and you got to also find ways to adapt and still make good progress, make good impact to your customers amongst those decisions as well.
Hmm. Awesome. Amazing. All right. So I think I have three more questions, which
Yeah.
should be which should be fast one. The first one being, um, what are you up to these days, and like where can people know more about you? So, like you mentioned, you speak a lot about different topics that you're super curious about. I would assume on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Um, like, do you have a Substack, and like where can people find more about yourself?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. My handle on LinkedIn is /Lakehouse. On Twitter, it's Kyle J. Weller, J for my middle name, Jordan. And I have a Medium blog, so you can follow me on Medium. I can't remember what my handle is there. And yeah, then I come to a lot of data conferences. I've got a lot of travel plans this year, so I'm going to be at a Snowflake Summit. I'm going to be at Data and AI Summit. I'm going to be at several conferences in between and after that. So if you're going to a data conference and you want to find me, maybe I'm there. Likely I'm there. But hit me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, follow me on Medium, and yeah, we'll be in touch. Definitely those ways.
That's awesome. So the second question is for everyone who is listening. So I'm assuming there are two types of profiles: people who are like more getting started into the field and very curious about all this technology related to data and AI. And when I say AI, I mean well, everything like from the lake house to the models and to whatever we do with this data. Um, so would you have some tips or lessons that you've learned through your career? And I know that we could do an episode full of like just tips based on all your
Yeah.
experiences, but maybe you have some tips on top of mind that you can throw to like more beginner profiles and more advanced profiles.
Okay.
That could be very useful.
Okay, great. In terms of like folks that want to break into data engineering fields or improve their like career progression in data engineering fields, or tell me some more on the question.
Yeah, I think I think data engineering is relevant, but maybe just like building in general and like the relationship with technology. And I was thinking like getting into the field like at the beginning, maybe where would you start, or what would
Hmm.
you look at, or what would you read? And
Hmm.
the same question, but for more advanced profile. So by that I mean, I don't know, people who have been five to 10 plus like yourself years in the field. Maybe you
Yeah.
have some key sources that you really keep yourself up to date with, and some other tips.
Yeah, yeah, great. There's actually this amazing resource that I ran into the other day that's on GitHub, of course. Let me see if I can quickly find it. There is a resource on GitHub that's kind of like it's a crowdsourced list of like blogs and people and like learning and papers and like all things related to data. I'm just seeing if I can find it really fast.
That's awesome. We'll put it in the
Um,
link of the
yeah,
video on YouTube and on all streaming platforms.
and if I can't find it in another 15 seconds here, I will make sure to send it to you an email and then you can include it in like the show notes and things for readers. But
Cool.
I've seen this and yeah, it looks like maybe I won't be able to find it on the fly, but it has this amazing collection of people, papers, blogs, like it's got just great like crowdsourced lists. So it's not just one person, there's no like agenda fueled behind it. Like people throw in PRs
Yeah.
and add to it. So it's really a great collection. I'll send that to
Awesome.
you afterwards. And then for folks that are interested to get more into data AI, ML, these kind of things, start at the beginning, the beginner kind of level, like where you're at in your organization, just hunt for, search for, you're going to be assigned, certain deliverables you got to get done in your daily like responsibilities. But start extending yourself to, okay, whether it's like designing or building a feature or whether it's some kind of engineering system that you're building, think about the data more and think about how you can measure what you're building and think about how you would collect the signals to measure that and measure its impact and its success. And so localize it to and strap it on side by side next to the projects that you're being paid for with your paycheck, and that you are like, you've got a manager watching to make sure you deliver. Just, because there's lots of ways you can learn and develop your skills and things outside of work, but force it more into that work context and find those small 5%, 10% little like pushes that I think when you do this, you'll also make your individual work projects more impactful, and your boss will value those more. And then you will start also building both the skills, but then also the reputation that, hey, this guy does extra data stuff related to his projects, extra data, extra data. This will be self-fulfilling for you to break into the field a little bit more if that's like what you're looking for on that. um, I think that's a good place there. Now, when someone's further in down the track, I can share, and maybe comes from personal bias, personal experiences here, but that's my lived experience that I have is um, um, working at large organizations, working at small organizations have a lot of pros and cons. Like there's some things that I truly miss about working at a large organization. There's some things that I definitely don't miss about working at a large organization. But the one thing that I can say, like especially you're like mid-career, or you're getting a little bit to a place where you're like 10 years in, you're feeling like, hey, promotions and things like are slowing down for me, progress slowing down for me, move to a startup. Because the I feel like the ways that I have been stretched and that I have stretched myself, and the learning and the progress just in my personal development, I feel like 1 year of time spent here is worth like 3 to 5 years of times that I've spent and learned and progressed on a personal level in a larger place. And not for everyone. I can't say the same would be true. The equations would always equal stars align for everyone in this kind of case like that. Um, but I find that it's incredibly fulfilling and stretching, and at the opportunity, right when you're in this small organization, the training wheels are off, the red tape is gone. You have a lot more autonomy, and you can push and build and become someone that you want to become inside there. So that's maybe the advice I'd give on the two sides.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. And so before I ask you the last question, if you're still listening to us, that means a lot. So thank you very much. Feel free to leave a comment or drop a like if you really enjoy this episode. And that would be very helpful to help the podcast grow and maybe help other people. So that being said, I just also want to thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing all this valuable knowledge. I'm having an amazing time. And last question is, do you have a message for the Let's Talk AI community? And it can be anything personal, professional, something that we discussed in this episode or not, you decide.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, I would say that there are so many greenfield opportunities in data right now, right? Data and AI, like I'm speaking of this collectively, right? The field is ripe with innovation and opportunities. And think about it relative even to just like software engineering, the tooling and ecosystems, and the way that we even form teams. It's a lot more mature, and there's a lot more room to change and progress as a data engineering, data AI kind of field as a whole, right? Some of this is fueled because the field is like a little bit newer. There's like a little bit more in like innovations and things around this, especially with that um, resurgence with AIs and LLMs and everything going on right now, right? But yes, like jump all in, go all in. There's so many opportunities to move the needle in your respective companies, but also in the communities. Start reaching out for, looking out for opportunities to join in early at open source projects, right? Like I mentioned Apache X table, we're only a few months old. Come join the Apache X table. If you're looking for a project to contribute to, that's a great one right there. There's so much work to be done even in just inside there, and you want to get into the heart of Lakehouse and these kind of things, that's your opportunity right there. Um, yeah, besides that, I would say that really appreciate you having me on the show, Thomas. It's been fun to chat. It's always a good time to just explore and have free discussion on these ideas. So thank you.
Likewise, I had an amazing time. And maybe a bonus question to everyone who is still listening, but if people are curious about One House or maybe working there and so on, like where like should people reach out to you directly, or is there like do you have opportunities opens right now? Can you share maybe more information
That's
on that?
right. Yep. Go to onehouse.ai on the web. There's a button on the top right that says careers. You hit that career button. It shows all the jobs that we have open today. And yes, apply there. You can reach out directly to me on those handles that I shared earlier, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever you might find there. You can reach out to me directly as well if you're interested in those roles. And, our company is a company that's building and growing fast. So if you see that, hey, I don't see a role on here that aligns to what I'm doing, but this is something I'm very passionate about, reach out anyways, because, maybe we're going to start hiring for that thing next month. Maybe we're going to start hiring for that thing in 3 months. We need to be connected
Yeah.
now. We need to have those conversations, get started. Let's keep warm and together on that. If you want to pursue it, let's talk.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Kyle. I had an amazing time and I wish you an amazing day.
Thank you so much, Thomas.